Crimea. Crimea. Piotr Chlebovich said that this provocation, talked about this provocation 1 year before the annexation, and we made a lot of noise then. It's about the destruction by the Tatars in Crimea, an exhibition devoted to Stalin. This was a problem for the Tatars because we know that 18th of May 1944, I repeat, the entire nation within 2 days was resettled, and they were going to Uzbek at that time, died during the resettlement. The entire nation deported and half of the nation killed or died because of the condition, lack of food. And now Stalin, this guy who has organized this deportation. There was an exhibition for him, glorifying him, and the Tatars destroyed it. We were defending the Tatars together with Piotr Chlebovich, and until today we are spit at in the Russian press, and in Kyrgyzstan also, and at that time there was a politician from Crimea, a pro-Russian politician. He confused me with Pietrushka Shustrova and another friend from Estonia that used to fulfill the function of the Minister of Internal Affairs in their countries. And at that time, well, there was a big hassle about it. Oli Shevchenko has defended us, and they were threatening him with trials. They were spitting at him. And this is what it looked like. Together with Chlebovich, we were warning about the annexation of Crimea many years earlier. I've met the director of the Department of Foreign Affairs of President Yushchenko at that time, and we're saying, give the Tatars autonomy. There should be a parliament in Crimea. You have peace, and like that, you're sitting on a bomb that will explode, and it has exploded many years afterwards. And the colleagues who have come here, or Crimean Tatars who are with Mustafa Dzhemilev from the very beginning, when, like Sinaver, Kadyrov, a few years in the lager. We also have here Eskender, Barijev, the member of Mejlis. This is the Crimean parliament, and we have Ablyativ Rustem, who
came here from the blockade of Crimea, so he's a direct, Crimean Tatar, came to us directly from behind the blockade, which is now organized as a Polish woman. Now I'm giving the floor over to our Crimean colleagues. Good morning, dear participants of the conference. I'd like to briefly present the situation and describe it, what it looks like as of today. As far as the Crimean issue is concerned, the problem of Crimea. And later, in greater details, it will be presented by my friends, colleagues, co-workers. And many of you know that currently the members of the Majlis, which is parliament or self-government of the Crimean Tatar nation, Mustafa Dzhemilev, with the participation of the Speaker of the Majlis, Rufat Chubarov, and other activists, established such a body for a peaceful civic blockade of the Crimea. What was it caused by? It was caused only by the fact that of late, the topic of the Crimea, during international talks between Ukraine and Moscow, has practically vanished from the table. Nobody even mentions the Crimea. Nobody demands the issue of the Crimea. The Russian diplomats announced and keep stating that we can just as well stop talking about the Crimea because it's already a subject of the Russian Federation. So to talk about the Crimea, well, Crimea needs to be talked about in a different format, on a different plane. Under such conditions, the members of the Majlis of the Crimean Tatar nation and the activists of the Crimean Tatar movement decided that they had no other choice but to pass a decision and to make sure that the Crimean issue should return to the media in the Ukraine and to the table during international negotiations. Just a moment ago, Diana said a couple of words, but I wish to continue along these lines that I very much liked it when, at the beginning of our conference, we mentioned those events that took place almost 30 years ago. And among the people present in this room are not simple passive observers of these events. These are active, immediate participants of the events and the processes that took place at that time and which became globally known. That's the fall of the Soviet Union and the democratization of the post-Soviet societies. And later, after the proclamation of independent states, where the former Soviet republics were. The most important thing at that was that once you start remembering that period and comparing that period with today, with the present day, we can admit that nothing much has happened as compared to those times. Why? Because, well, many from among the Soviet republics proclaimed independence, but in fact they never made independent states. The most terrible thing is how the democratic movement of the Soviet Union from the end of the 1980s, which combined and integrated, and it could achieve such a goal that most people disbelieved that they could make the Soviet Union fall. But unfortunately, those people allowed the former communists to gain control and take over. And they did something, as Lenin once put it, one step forward, two steps back. So maybe the communists had taken even two steps backwards at that time, and they allowed us to pacify and rest on our laurels, and then they took over and assumed control. And now we don't know how to stop the hydra which is growing day by day today, these days. Please recall, I cannot even think 7 years, among those 7 years back, I cannot think of any relative period. Every 5 or 7 years, there was a so-called local war, local conflict breaking out, and Russia got stronger and stronger as a result of this. And if they say that in the Republic of Ichkeria, Russia had to quite significantly, quite seriously, had to work, had to fight over that region. But once Russia managed to persuade the whole world and change the orientation of the national liberation movement, that's to say, to lead to some religious conflicts, then I'm talking about the Chechen movement, and then the world turned a blind was the next one on the agenda. Yes, Georgia is still holding tight, but that means that Georgia has prevailed and it's still there. That's a remorse to all of us for not having estimated our enemy at that time and for not having consolidated all the forces and for not having condemned communism and for not having put a huge period on that hydra that we call the global communism. And as regards the Crimea of today, alas, I should say that the phenomenon of Ukraine should be slightly expanded, and I would construe the Ukrainian phenomenon slightly differently. I'm now talking to Oleg Shevchenko, that the nation, through its volunteers, the nation was able to defend its territory. And I'm talking about the time when regular troops, the political elites, the state elites, were basically given way. They were just giving Ukraine away, selling it away in a very pronounced way. And this was very clearly visible in the Crimea. Such a tactical step when the so-called green men, without any distinctions, appeared in the Crimea and started their actions. Everybody realized that those were Russians, that those were Russian troops, Russian troopers, and that those were the sailors of the Black Sea fleet stationing in the Ukraine. But it was more comfortable for everyone to state at that time that those green men, as we call them, without any signs, well, that was the definition assumed at that time. But did they have any marks, any distinctions? It doesn't make any difference. Those people were carrying weapons. But despite this, the Ukrainian Secret Service, the Ukrainian Ministry of the Interior, or the Ukrainian army stationing in the Crimea, they did not take any steps to stop those people and to stop and counteract the occupation of the Crimea in such a way. And once the Russian military officers were contacted by the Crimean Tatars to go against the occupation, we did not find any understanding with the military circles in the army. It must be, probably the speaker means the Ukrainian army, not to counteract the Russian attack. And the Ukrainian military did not provide a possibility to the Crimean Tatars to get armed. And recently we obtained information also that the Ukrainian Secret Service had several scenarios of the developments in the Crimea. One of these scenarios assumed the arming of the Crimean nation of Crimean Tartars, to provide them with automatic weapons and to use it because it was presented that the Russian-speaking community had to be rescued from the attacking armed Crimean Tartars. And the Crimea became a good example of the fact that the whole decade political system of the Ukraine, and not only the Ukraine, because a similar political system is in place in other post-Soviet nations. So, in a way, that such a regime allows for the revival of the empire of evil. Maybe it will no longer be the Soviet Union. It might function under a different name, but the fact that this will be a revival or re-establishment of an empire of evil. This means that we should combine our efforts to disallow the revival of that empire, and this can only be done and disallowed once we start talking about this in detail, and we should act against them without expecting for them to withdraw from the east of Ukraine. And rather than that, we should act in favor of freeing the Crimea, and so that they would withdraw from the Caucasian republics. Good morning. Well, first we need peace. On behalf of the Ukrainian Majlis, I'd like to pass the greetings and congratulate the organizers on the 25th anniversary of establishing the Coordination Center Warsaw 90. Thank you very much for being here, for working, and for the fact that in your works you have been mindful and for remembering the tragedy that the Crimean Tatar nation has gone through. I'd like to wish to you a fruitful debate, an active debate, so that specific results could be accomplished over this couple of days, so that we could continue our activities. 25 years have passed. Is it much or little for history? Of course, we can consider it differently and evaluate this period in different ways, but still everybody is asking the same question. What have we done over the 25 years? And what are the results? What are the fruits of our work? And the topics are still active that we touched upon 25 years as part of the Coordination Center. Are these topics still valid today? I wish to say that these topics are still valid. I, Eskender Barijev, am saying that the world is endangered by the Russian Federation. Before, it was the Soviet Union that occupied both Poland and a couple of other nations, and the Polish nation fought for the freedom and independence. It organized itself, it organized the opposition, and Solidarity was organized in Poland, and the experiences of solidarity are what we need now, including the Crimean Tartars and the residents of the Ukraine and those living in the Crimea, so that they could fight for their freedom and act against the tyranny and aggression which unfortunately is taking place in the Crimea. And such is the policy of the Russian Federation. Here among us are the representatives of many countries. Of course, if we combine our efforts and at all levels, both national and international levels, we proclaim that the Crimea is not only a question and a problem of Russia, and what they're doing in the Crimea is it's genocide. It's a crime against humanity. It's contrary to the international law as shaped after Nuremberg, and it took decades to accomplish. And when the whole international community aimed at making sure that the world should be civilized and democratic, we can see that the threats of the 21st century are still threats. And in being in the Azerbaijan or Lithuania, Georgia, or in other countries, we should inform them about the problems of the Crimea, and we should inform our societies, and we should also make sure that our national communities should raise this topic onto the international level. We ask you for solidarity. Please observe solidarity and help the Crimean Tatar nation to help us overcome the nation. I won't be talking about the blockade that we're applying from against the Crimea. We frequent from the Majlis, Mr. Ablyatifov, Rustem will be talking about this. This means that the Majlis of the Crimean Tatar nation has organized this, and they are asking for Crimean Tatars not to forsake the Crimea. They asked for remaining there, because we have the experience from in 1873 when Russia, through its pressures, ousted the original inhabitants of the Crimea. They ousted the Crimean Tatars, and now a similar policy is applied. They're bringing other peoples from Russia, and they will be saying that they are the inhabitants of the Crimea rather than the Crimean Tatars, and they have the right to this land rather than the Tatars. And today we should be saying that political repressions are being applied against the Crimean Tatars. There are political repressions, there are searches in their homes, and every day you can hear that in one of the regions or counties, whole districts are blocked where Crimean Tatars live.
No, you can see rules for participants of our actions, and this rules provide all the rules for rules of participants towards persons who crossing Crimean borders. Yes. And maybe you know our slogan is our blockade is politely blocked out. I have note I'm happy personally that our action is supported by Ukrainian citizens from all corners of Ukraine. Many people coming from western, eastern Ukraine, from central part of Ukraine to support us, to stay together with us to border points. Many NGOs, many movements coming with aids, with financial aids, with foods, with everything. I'm sure our blockade is impossible without support of Ukrainian nations, without support of Ukrainian society. And you can see signature people from all corners and all regions of Ukraine. And I'm very happy to stay together with people from Chernovtsi, from Ternopil, from Kherson, from Kharkiv, even from front Mariupol. Activists Mariupol supported us too. And now my friend, my colleague Eskender Barijev said just now, is not struggle of Crimean nations. It's our common fight, common struggle against the Russian aggressors, and we consider this blockade, this action, as a sector of front, a front against Russian aggressor. And I would like to invite you to join us, to support us, to stay together with us. But for example, our friend, our compatriot Adas Jakubauskas from Lithuania told me and that our Lithuanian friends are preparing their convoy with aid to Crimean border, and soon we can see our Lithuanian friends near Crimean border. I would like to welcome you again and invite to Crimean border too. Thank you very much. Okay. Any question?
Yes.
In these demands, there was no the occupation of Crimea, so that Crimea would be freed from the Russian occupation.
Actually, the occupation of Crimea is our main this first demand. Our wish to free our motherland. And this demands it's like it's the first steps. It's the first steps to freedom of Crimea.
Я хочу вначале поблагодарить всех, кто сюда меня.
I would like to first of all thank all those that have invited me here. Madam Khmelnytska, organizers, these are my old friends. I'm extremely grateful for this invitation. Insofar as Crimea, please forgive me, but what you were talking about, it's a bit unstable, washed out in a way, I'd say. The 25 years of our fight, the dissident movement, what we have started with at the time, Georgia, no one was punished for what was happening in Georgia when 14 people were killed with shovels, in Vilnius also. Those that took tanks into the streets of Vilnius, nobody was punished. That was during Gorbachev's times, then Chechnya and Georgia, other areas. But in Crimea, Ukraine, Crimea is a part of Ukraine. This is one state, one country, and Crimea was occupied by so-called green people. It was occupied by Russian soldiers. This is an aggression. Who's given the order? Who's given the military order in Crimea so that they don't stop the Russians? We were watching television during Maidan first, and when they were killing the activists in Maidan, of course, these were the activities of the special forces. These were their activities, but Crimea was occupied without one shot. And if you remember, the listeners from the military academy who have said that they will be faithful to the oath to the Ukrainian state, that these students, these young people were forced to say this oath. So who's given the order? We have to work according to the international law. We have to start penal proceedings against the person who in the Ukrainian government has given the order for the Ukrainian forces in Crimea would not that's the person who's given up on Crimea.
And what now the previous speaker said, that the secret services of Ukraine think that if they had distributed arms among the Crimean Tatars, they would have been destroyed. Let me tell you, nothing like that would have happened. They were just afraid of the resistance, because if fight had stopped and if civilians had protested, then the Ukrainian soldiers would have fought as well, and the Crimea would not have been given away. So these are such gossip. This is such gossip, such rumors, and I wouldn't understand this. I don't quite understand this blockade of yours. I don't quite understand what it's about. So, don't you want for food to be able to get to the Crimea? If you're in the Crimea and the Crimean nation, well, so you have to boycott the occupants, the occupation authorities. Maybe that's the way to act, so that the Crimea should not feel on its own. And if you're talking to this, to the Ukrainian authorities, for them to ask for Dzhemilev to get to the Crimea, well, once he gets there, he can basically be killed. So you should not appeal to the government of the Russian Federation, who are your families. You don't talk to your enemies. It's going to be pointless. You have to talk to America, to the European Union. These forces who are intermediaries, the go-betweens, they have undertaken that. Well, there was this Budapest agreement. The UK, the US subscribed to that agreement. And it's precisely the Ukrainian authorities that should be responsible, held responsible for having given away the Ukraine without a single shot.
Thank you very much, Sala. Yes, I am agree with you. We have many questions to current Prime Minister Arseniy Yatsenyuk, to former acting President Mr. Turchinov, because I remember that time our youth. I'm personally consider that our people must defend our motherland themselves, and I remember our national leader Mustafa Dzhemilev called to Ukrainian government to give our guns, to give to Crimean people guns to defend Crimea, and I agree with you, and I'm sure Mr. Yatsenyuk and Mr. Turchinov must answer to these questions, and regarding civil blockade of Crimea. we consider any relations, any as well trade or economic relations with occupied territory, and we cannot trade with occupants, and therefore we have stopped to this trade, to traffic of trucks to Crimea and from Crimea. Our goal is to destroy Russia, and economically as well. Thank you.
If I may, because there are some... All right, it's working. I'd like to apologize. I was talking about a different thing. I was talking about the fact that there was a project. I now understand when SBU should have ensured weapons for the Crimean Tatars. The situation was as following. Let me tell you this. I did not necessarily wish to touch upon this topic today, but in the Crimea, the so-called Ukrainian army, along with those green men, would have started the physical annihilation, destruction of the Crimean Tatars. Over all these years, we had to do with another phenomenon. Neither the Russians nor the Ukrainians, it would have been the Slavic brethren against the Crimean Tatars. And it was not what they talked about during interviews in front of a camera. It was really the case. An officer was standing there, and they told him, "Excuse me, what sort of instructions did you expect when your military unit was basically occupied? And what sort of an order from Kiev did you expect?" And he said, "I couldn't imagine that you could possibly have shot at a brother." And the Crimean Tatars were not his Slavic brothers, so they would have been annihilated, basically. I'm sorry, I wish to oppose here and say something to respond. But, well, ostensibly, they would have shot. Mr. Putin has a psychology of a criminal, of a prisoner, basically, or an ex-prisoner. He wanted to put the Crimean nation to a test, and I'm sure that if the green men would have been opposed, they would have been treated differently if they had started to shoot. And it's quite right that the whole Putin camarilla should be responsible for everything that took place in the Crimea, in Vilnius, back in the 90s. Gorbachev should be held responsible for this, whereas those people who were responsible for what was going on in the Crimea, who did not object, who did not resist. And please don't try to persuade me that the Tatars don't have their own weapons. I'm sorry, we won't be talking about this. No, we won't be talking about this. But let me tell you that resistance is provided not only through weapons, but by being firm. You need to ask a firm question to those ruling in the Ukraine who did a spot of work to defend the Crimea, and I think that they took pleasure in giving Crimea away. I'm sorry. I think that both Mr. Podrobnik and Senator Kadyrov are both right. Why? First of all, the Ukrainian troops in the Crimea gave up, surrendered. It was the fault of the commanders and the Ukraine that they should have maintained such commanders. And what's more, it was about the mentality of part of the Ukrainian elites. And I'm not only talking about the pro-Putin elites. And alas, it was also what was mentioned in Moscow, that this is the original Russian nation, Iskomnaya Ruskaya Zemla. I heard the same among independentist intellectuals in the Crimea. And likewise, when I was talking in the Department of International Affairs in the Chancery of President Yushchenko, and I heard a similar thing. But these are our Slavic brethren, our Christian brethren. Those are Muslims. They're Tartars. It's a threat, and they never answered a threat to what? Why they thought in this way? I said, this is a nail to drive in your coffin. And he had said that I was writing about this as a journalist, that if I had been a commander of the battery of artillery, of the missiles, I would have accepted a visit from the representative of Russia. I would have shown, now make sure not a single car passes through this, because if the carburetor explodes and we think that it was a shot, that all the missiles are aiming at the Black Sea Fleet, and the Russians would not have attacked, because Alexander Podrabinek is right. That's the Putin mentality, and this mentality consists in the following: that if you expect resistance, he gives up. And all the talks in Minsk of Germans, Russians, that's a balm to Putin's ear. That such nations and such governments as Putin's Russia and Putin, that you should talk to them firmly. If you show your soft underbelly to them, he won't understand that you want to talk to them. He will bite you. He will bite you dead. So in this way, Sinaver is also right. And the Tartars, if the Tartars had started fighting, I'm 100% sure that even those pro-Ukrainian Ukrainians living in the Ukraine would have fought against the Tartars. Well, Russia is playing us around as though we were kids. It's basically introducing dissent among nations, and it introduces a situation without any way out. Even if you don't want to fight and you start fighting, it's in Russia's favor. And the affairs go so far that you cannot get back from this. Well, let's take the example between Poland and Lithuania. There's a proposal of an autonomy or a Polish autonomous republic in Lithuania. Is it another Donbass? What's more, I'm from Upper Silesia, and the movement of Upper Silesian autonomy, it's also treated, well, that's a curiosity, folklore, and now they're ousting our people, Poles, Silesians, but thinking in a Polish way. Well, the deputy governor was fired. The deputy head of the Fund for Environmental Protection, now for the veterans. So Polish Silesian patriots are ousted, are fired from their posts. That's a march through the institutions of culture and science. And I'm just waiting for gentlemen with T-shirts Schlesien on them, who don't even talk German. I happen to speak German, but they're saying that so it's the manipulation of Russia. And as a Polish woman, let me tell you one thing that I prefer: for Russian tanks to be stopped around Donbass rather than them being stopped around Katowice. These are harsh words, but that's the way I think. And now both parties have been right. Basically, the mentality has been changed.
Я все-таки хотел бы ответить на
Well, I'd like to answer one of the question which was mentioned, because there were both objective and subjective issues mentioned. You say that there was no resistance. Well, that's not true. And let me give you an example. Let's speak openly and frankly. When Putin and Yanukovych, well, there was only one legal body in power, Turchinov, the acting president. At that time, the army was absolutely demoralized. In the Crimea, there were plenty of FSB workers, and it's a very difficult issue, and it will have to be investigated. But the issue is that the acting president, Turchinov, even in legal matters, he didn't know how to make some decisions. It wasn't so easy. If someone did not start shooting, that's a different issue. So these are subjective elements. As far as the Crimean Tatars are concerned, the army didn't work out. During the occupation in February, March, when I contacted people over Skype, and I got a question from Lviv, and they asked me, what will you guys be doing? And I said, what can we possibly do? For 23 years, the Tatars did not serve in the military or any other defense. They didn't have any military experience. We need to have specialists who would know how to organize it correctly. I'm a Majlis member. We convened, we discussed every day how to solve the situation on a daily basis. And the opposition from the Crimean Tatars, February the 20th is considered to be an official starting point of the occupation. February 26th in Simferopol there was a huge demonstration. Then with the activists in Kiev there was also a demonstration.
There was a rally, and until today there are political prisoners in prisons, those that were speaking on behalf for the Ukraine. And what Mizhli said, that we ignored the referendum, that 90% of Crimean Tatars didn't go to that referendum. This is fictitious in reality. This is also opposition. This is also fighting. Crimean Tatars went to the streets, to the roads, and tried to block the movement of war machines and military units. They tried to help the youth so that together with Ukrainian soldiers they could fight, but they couldn't do it. I personally went to Sevastopol. I personally was in the Navy units, and I was telling them, let's take your families from here so you can act as officers. And I said, thank you very much for your goodwill, but we'll manage ourselves. And we can see how they've managed. Not many units have returned, so this is something which was happening not only today, not in one day, but this work was being done many years earlier. And we have what we have. The 3rd of May, a lot of criminal cases, administrative cases that are carried out when the Tatars have crossed the borders in order to meet their leader Mustafa. There was the opposition. They were opposing people also who had guns in their hands, and these were not the green people. We knew that this was the Russian army. There were groups, and the Chechnyan old people came, and they were sorry for these actions that were happening within the Vostok group. They were sorry for what they've done wrong towards this indigenous nation, the Crimean Tatars. So the resistance the political pressure, appealing in order not to vote for the Crimean Council. The Crimean Tatars do not recognize this authority because they didn't participate in the elections, and they've shown it to the entire world. And this is called resistance. This is not recognizing the power, the authority that has taken Crimea by force, and the fight is continued. And when we say, and these problems have been shown here, this occupation of Crimea, this is the most important thing. Also, the food blockage, this is not so easy to be solved. This is a part of our policy, fighting for the liberation of Crimea, for Crimea to be just one. Insofar as the freedom of our state, and this is happening from the end of the Second World War and the trials in Nuremberg, and we have to join our efforts. We need to look at all these works. We'll be talking about it, how much the situation can be changed compared to Chechnya. Crimean mountains are not the same mountains that are in Chechnya. They are very close by. They are not very high. And if we are fighting in the mountains, it's not possible. Once all military units were cleared, the amount of weapons was counted in order to control every weapon, if it was given back or not. This was all well thought of by the Russian Federation. It was prepared and it was done. And today, Crimea, who deals with military history, he's aware of the fact that in order to strengthen Ukrainian military, we need at least 6-7 years, and this is an optimistic number. This is a very long period. In Kharkov, already they're producing their own weapons, but there is a problem that remains, problems that we cannot solve within 5 minutes, and this is not only about Crimean Tatars. This is about everybody. So we need to be aware of that. So this resistance action blockage, we should be able to force the Russian Federations to get out of Crimea. If we join our forces, if we create this international solidarity that we are talking about during this conference, then we'll be able to change something and continue this process. Thank you very much.
Уважаемые коллеги, я один из активных участников Майдана.
Hello, I'm one of the participants, active participants of Maidan. I used to live in Crimea. I was supplying food, and a few simple things I can tell you about what was happening there, what has happened there. There were conflicts, it's true, between Russians, Ukrainians, and Tatars, but insofar as my job, there were no conflicts because we found common language and we were cooperating. The preparations for annexation were very serious. There were a lot of your colleagues in the prosecutor's office, not just one person, not only in Ukraine, not only in Crimea, but in the entire Ukraine. The annexation of Crimea was prepared earlier. This is why there was a failure. What I wanted to say, the main format of the tribunal in United Nations will not allow us to treat it as a military crime. Right now, with the Crimean Tatars, we are fighting together in Donbass, and there are Russians, Ukrainians, and Crimean Tatars there. Tatars not only from Crimea, but also Tatars who are convicted from the Tatar Republic. I'm talking about the Tatars as a whole, yeah, not only Tatars from Crimea.
Да, спасибо большое. У меня есть друзья татары, которые называют татары. Они из Крыма, из Казани.
I have Tatars, I have colleagues, they're from Crimea, they're from Kazan, and we're fighting together with them in Donbass.
Дякую за можливість виступити. Я вас перебував.
Thank you very much for letting me speak.
У нас еще много вопросов не выясненных, конечно.
We still have a lot of unclarified issues, unclarified matters. I think that there will be a lot, we need a lot of time to solve all these problems, but we should all join forces together so that Putin's administration will not become enrooted there, so that the conflicts, international conflicts, would not spread.
Я вам хочу сказать, в 1990
I would like to tell you that in 1993, before the First World War between Chechnya and Russia, Jakov has met with the Cossacks. Russia wanted to make a buffer out of them in the future war between Russia and Chechnya, so between Christians and Muslims. Johor has met them. It was a big meeting, and they really cared about what was happening, that Chechnya would be annihilated. But Johor said, no, we will not let you harm the Cossacks. So I think that we should be led by that, and we should be telling Ukrainians that we will not let anyone harm our Tatars, and the Tatars should say, we're not going to let you harm the Ukrainians that live in Crimea. And Turchinov in Maidan was not as recognized, not as known, and he said the following: that 2 days later he's gonna catch and bring Yanukovych there, and the Ukrainians remember very well what was happening in Maidan, and I think that all believed him. And after 4 days, Yanukovych escaped to Russia. Who helped him? That I don't know. I don't believe Turchinov, and I now see that Turchinov was at fault in the annexation of Crimea. I wouldn't leave that aside. This is an important question. I would like to suggest that there should be a trial, a penal case against him, because there were 700 generals in the Ukrainian army at that time, and the main commander also has to be responsible, liable, and I'm not asking you to resist with weapons in your hands, but thanks to the law, United States and United Kingdom have promised that the territory of Ukraine will not be divided. If the Ukrainian authorities cannot ensure it, maybe Ukrainian law could ensure it.